There's, obviously, we're standing on the inner shell. There. We have the observation deck, which is somewhere up there. And we have this platform in the center here. So 3 different planes that we're walking on. 3 different gravitational orientations.
Chief, you need to hear this.
We're detecting a slight gravimetric disturbance near the planetary entrance. Suggest altering approach vector 43K-750.
Up here, upcoming here, I sort of like to think that one of these knights, the Knight Lancer specifically, is Endurance of Will. Because it's usually the final knight you face off against to get to the controls to the cryptum. Those in Halo 4. Those are called focus turrets, and you'd think that like stuff like the here we go. Hold on, gotta kill quote unquote Endurance of Will. Here we go. High endurance.
Wait,
Okay.
something's not right.
We don't have time.
But you'd think though that
Infinity, this is Sierra 117.
what the hell was I saying, actually?
Forward unto dawn. Do you
I can't
copy?
even remember. It's unfortunate.
Infinity, do you read?
Oh, rest, now I remember. But you'd think though that like the focus rifle that the Covenant used, that would have been reverse engineered from the Sentinel beam, because it's pretty much an analog to the Sentinel beam. That's actually not the case. It was reverse engineered from constructs like the focus turret and similar weapons. Here is the Didact, obviously. His actual name is Shadow of Sundered Star. It was given the nickname of Didact
So fades the great harvest of my betrayal.
when he taught at the War College of the Mantle. His students found him particularly strict in definitions and his moral teachings.
Even these beasts recognize what you were oblivious to, human. Your nobility has blinded you, as ever.
Many people here think that the Didact has the Force or telekinesis. I find the notion that people think this, who have played the Halo games, to be completely preposterous, because
But what hubris?
pretty much in every instance there's been Forerunner structures or Forerunner technology in the games, they've all utilized anti-gravity.
Mastered even these primitives.
You can even see the anti-gravity manipulation right there, going into his wrist.
The mantle.
The device itself is called the Constraint Field. It was used by warrior servants.
Time was your ally, human. But now it has abandoned you. The Forerunners have returned.
So interestingly enough, despite
Is now yours.
despite humanity being dubbed Reclaimers by the Librarian and her plans, humanity aren't the only Reclaimers. There's 2 chief Reclaimers, actually. They want to reclaim the Foreigner legacy for their own
Chief,
reasons.
please. We've gotta
The
go.
Master Chief is obviously one,
That Didact, he manipulated Infinity's signal
and the
to get us
Didact
to
is the
release
other,
it.
actually.
Get up!
What's happening?
Moving the satellite.
Tons of people also found it completely confusing for how the Didact, or how Cortana pulled the Didact's name out of seemingly nowhere. First off, I'll explain exactly where she got it from in this game, and then why it's not as like ridiculous and annoying as people initially thought. So, first, obviously, is that the Julam Dama shouts out Didact. That cutscene, so that Cortana could have obviously heard that. The other thing, though, is that in the Didact speech, he does do some significant teaching or lecturing to the Master Chief about humanity's nature and the librarian. It's very didactic, you could say, so she could have surmised that, or she could have just called him Didact purely out of because that's all she knew him as. Lastly, though, it's not even ridiculous that it seemingly came out of nowhere, because at least, as I clearly stated, we have two explanations for how she got the name. Back actually in Halo 2, entirely similar thing happened. We come into contact with the Gravemind. We don't know that the Gravemind is called the Gravemind until the level High Charity. At the beginning of the level. Cortana says something along the lines of that creature beneath the library, that Gravemind, tricked us. We were just a diversion, which is, you know, practically identical to what happens with the Didact here in Halo 4. But it's not. I don't think it's lazy storytelling. Actually, it's thematic in a way. The Didact is, for many reasons, the way he is in Halo 4, because his mind was tormented by a Gravemind, and he was mentally messed up as a result. Nice touch. That explosion.
Mayday! This is the captain of the UNSC Infinity. Unknown entity has seized control of our ship. We're without power. We're on a collision course with an unidentified Forerunner planet.
Why does the Didact not need one of those revival baths like he did in Cryptum? His augmentations. That was a more traditional Cryptum in the book Cryptum.
Marking.
Where he was basically rendered to his state of, like, literal death. But this is a combat Cryptum, and it seems to rely more on subspace stasis. Or stasis of some other kind.
You know where he's heading.
Same place we are.
And on to Infinity. Oh, back when Halo 4 was coming out, you had the Halo 4 promo site on Xbox.com. In the background, you could hear radio transmissions that you couldn't make out at all. People actually separated the audio file and, you know, slowed it down or, you know, made it more clear. And then they transcribed everything that was being said. And it wasn't just random stuff. It was actually, like, documenting everything that people on Infinity were doing right immediately after the crash. So they actually had a moment of respite before the Covenant and Prometheans showed up and started boarding the ship.
Something tells me that's only because the Didact wanted it that way.
This is Lasky to UNSC Infinity.
Then obviously, as the chief there says, the Didact purposely kept the Infinity intact. He clearly could have kept the Infinity in a nosedive and just completely
Signals bouncing
detonated
in and out.
as soon
I
as
can't
it
clean up.
hit
Light up their friend or
the
photons. We're gonna need something to zero in on.
Requiem. It's not really elaborated on, but you can clearly inference that the Didact kept Infinity intact for two reasons. One, to get caught up on the state of affairs in the galaxy while he's been in his cryptum for 100,000 years. And two, to determine the location of a composer.
We've lost contact with your Pelican. Report in.
Which is what he's doing.
They must not have received
Does
this
Infinity
distress
not
call.
have its Strident frigates aboard at this point? It does, I think. Actually, no, we don't even know if it has them aboard at this point. If they were aboard, they'd obviously be damaged in the crash.
One of them's an officer.
Check
his IFF tag.
But
The tag IDs him as Jimenez Halo J.
yeah, they'd be damaged in the crash. And actually, the places they're stored in the sub-vessel deployment bays, that's what they're called, you can actually access a terminal that's relative to sub-vessel deployment bays, and it talks a bit about how you can't do anything with them because they're extensively damaged. Deployment bays are. It doesn't mention anything about ships in there. Now we see the Didact has regained control of his Prometheans. They have turned orange, indicating that they're now in an aggressive state, more hostile, and attack focused, I guess. This is conjecture on my part about the colors and what they mean. We don't have an official explanation. We used to think that the colors actually were relative to the foreigner rates. Like green would be minor, orange or red would be warrior servant, and blue would be life worker. But now we know that's obviously not true. The weapon I have now, as I'm sure many of you clearly know, is the DMR. You'll notice it looks quite different from the way it looked in Halo Reach. That's because they're two separate models. The DMR in Halo Reach is the M392 DMR. And the DMR we have now, which I'm about to drop, is the M395. Which was actually upsized on purpose, meaning that it's fairly large for a standard human. It was the M395 DMR was actually made specifically for Spartan 4s. But the efficiency and effectiveness of the M395 made it so standard military personnel started using them as well. Many people, I feel, don't get to see this animation
Hold up.
due to the way it activates. Let's see.
This is what they've been using to see through the fog.
As much as I'd like to explain how Promethean vision works, we don't know how it works. The description for Promethean vision, we know that it's sort of a foreigner version of UNSC's visor technology. And obviously, you guys might be familiar with visor from ODST. That was a type of visor. Technically, the visor is actually the software that conveys information in a specific manner to the player. So the everything I'm seeing, you know, everything like the radar, the shield bar, the ammo, all that stuff. That's visor software. And different software can be geared